On today's show, day one of Houston Rockets training camps is in the books, and we've got so much to talk about. Ime Udoka, Jabari Smith Jr., and Aaron Holiday spoke to the media, as well as we got about 10 minutes of access to scrimmage footage from the Rockets with so much to pick apart. Fred VanVleet and Jalen Green, two-man game working well. Ime Thompson dropping some serious dimes. Jabari Smith Jr. posterizing Tari, Eason. So much to get to on today's Locked on Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
Throw it up to Jalen Green.
Sengun here in the short row. Oh, my, that's the no-look.
Jabari for three and the win. Yeah!
Look at Tari Eason.
Here comes Tari. Oh!
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
The Houston Rockets select Ime Thompson and Cam Whitmore.
One thing I have never done is not made the playoffs, and so we want to take that step here as well.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked on Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked on NBA Mondays. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin, and the show, of course, at Locked on Rockets, free and available wherever you listen to your podcasts, including YouTube. And as always, thank you so much for making Locked on Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you for making LOR part of your day every single day. Joining us now is your weekly co-host, the X's and O's man himself, Alykhan Bijani, who you can track down on Twitter at Rockets_insider, here to react and break down day one of Houston Rockets training camp with me. I am here in beautiful Lake Charles, and it was an incredibly productive day one of camp, Alykhan. The Kool-Aid is being consumed by what's bigger than a gallon, by the metric ton, by the shipping container full, because we have a lot of positivity after Houston Rockets Media Day, and we got to hear from Coach Ime Udoka, Jabari Smith Jr., and Aaron Holiday as our three interviews. But I think the piece that has everybody raving after day one of training camp is the about 10-ish minutes of scrimmage footage that I was able to collect and subsequently post to our LOR YouTube channel. If you haven't checked it out, please go do that. There's a lot of great stuff. Alykhan and I have a ton of notes to go over from that little bit of scrimmage footage that we saw, a lot of key takeaways that we want to share. And then also, shout out to the Houston Rockets for coming out of nowhere from the top of the rope and signing veteran 3-and-D wing Reggie Bullock, who is a fantastic addition to this team. So we'll share some thoughts on him as well later on in this episode. But Alykhan, man, day one of training camp, are you drinking the Kool-Aid?
I am drinking the Kool-Aid, and let me tell you, just from this video you posted of that scrimmage, that got me excited, but also just listening to Ime Udoka and just kind of him talking about what he expects from this team. And then also the questions you asked and others asked about how he wants to incorporate some guys, including the veterans. You had asked him about Alperen, Sengun, and Jalen Green. There's a lot of really cool, interesting things to take away from that. Makes me even more excited to watch them play going into next week.
Absolutely. Look, I think that one thing that was very apparent during media day, and this is already, it's carried over into day one of camp, and I hope that it becomes kind of the identity for this team moving forward, is there's a sense of kind of desire, urgency, a drive that was non-existent in these past 2 to 3 years, unfortunately. And a big part of that is, right, this is an organization that knew for the last 2 to 3 years they were going to be bad, right? Going in, they knew they were going to be a bad team. And sure, you can still try to focus on development and individual growth and all those things, but it's really hard when you are a competitor at the highest level and you know that going in, your season doesn't matter, that you're going to go through an 82-game slog, and at the end of it, you're only going to have a handful of wins to be proud of. And that's just a tough place to be for any player, especially young players who are still trying to find themselves at the NBA level. But I think the additions of the veterans are already paying dividends. Some of the points that Ime Udoka brought up, though, when he discussed kind of how day one of camp was going. I had the chance to ask him just kind of how the players were responding to the concepts that he was trying to get across here in day one, both offensively, defensively. And he said that for the most part, the young guys were already kind of exposed to some of the concepts going back to summer league. So it's more about kind of getting some of the veterans now up to speed on different terminologies and different ways that they want to do things. And I was able to follow up and ask, are they diving into anything super advanced right now, or just trying to keep it simple? And he said that they're actually keeping it incredibly simple right out of the gate. In fact, he said that we're working backwards essentially, because they're breaking everything down and getting back to the fundamentals before getting into anything advanced as far as schematics go. He says that he's going to add more schemes later, whereas right now they're just focusing on a lot of switching, on-off ball, that kind of stuff. He said that his main point that he's trying to emphasize right now is effort and execution. Those are the two key things that he's emphasizing. He did a 28-minute film session with the Rockets during day one of camp, just kind of highlighting and pointing out a lot of the mistakes. And Alykhan, Ime is such a no-nonsense guy, man. He was just like, he said, when asked about kind of some of the things that he was pointing out, he was like, well, let's face it, things were pretty ugly. And he goes on to highlight.
He put the win totals. He put the win totals from the last 3 years on there for, the players to look and say, hey, this is unacceptable. If you want to win, you can't be performing the same way you did the last few years, because they have Jae'Sean, who's been there for the last 3 years. They have Jalen and Alperen, who have been there for 2 years, and then you have the rookies from last year and the players from last year. It's unacceptable, and it's a reminder to them. And I want to say a quote that Ime mentioned multiple times, not only media day, but he's mentioned this since he became the head coach. And this is from media day, though. He said, the growth of our young guys will be paramount to our success. We're not bringing in veterans to save the day. We're bringing guys to add to what we already have here. And that, to me, is the most important thing. You have veterans to provide structure, but at the end of the day, it's all about what those young players do with that structure that's going to make them successful. And the effort and the execution and all those different things you're talking about is going to be very important for them moving forward.
Absolutely, right? And again, for Ime, it really is such a tall order for him to have to come in and break everything down to almost nothing, right? Because he's going to have to break these young guys out of some bad habits that they probably developed over these last couple of years. And that was always kind of a worry, is if you are going to be as bad as the Rockets were, with, little to no accountability, no structure, no hierarchy, none of that, right? You're just kind of this blah for 2 years. You're going to have, eventually players are going to have to relearn how to play the right way. But it does already feel like Ime is commanding the respect of the players, and that they are buying into the lessons that he's already sharing. Jabari Smith Jr. had some thoughts on just kind of how day one of camp was going. He said it was great that they were competing from the jump. Everybody came to training camp in shape. So it was good that they could get off to a good start. He said there was a big focus on defense, so that they were last in the league in defense, and that it's just trying not to repeat that. And Udoka goes on to say that, basically for this group, they came in shape. So he was able to do kind of a longer session. They're not doing 2-a-days during training camp, so just kind of a longer day one session. And ultimately, I think it was an overall really good day one. There's a lot of kind of confidence and optimism around it. It feels very different than last year. Again, the vibe around the entire team from media day to day one of camp feels completely different from last year. And there's like these small subtle things. I guess we can call them Ime-isms, whatever we want to call them, that I want to share about day one of training camp, little observations that I had, as well as we want to talk about the scrimmage footage that I was able to pick up, some of our key takeaways from that, as well as the Houston Rockets signing veteran 3-and-D wing Reggie Bullock. We're going to get to all of that and so much more in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Ibotta. Look, Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items from produce to personal care to pantry goods so that you can make sure that you're beating inflation no matter what you are purchasing. Other apps give you points that honestly don't really amount to much. With Ibotta, you get real cash back that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Just link your loyalty account or upload your receipt after you shop and get your cash back. It's that simple. You can earn cash back on hundreds of online brands and retailers too when you start with Ibotta, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and so many more. Download the Ibotta app now and use code LOCKED to start earning real cash back. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use code LOCKED. That's Ibotta, IBOTTA, in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKED. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Now, Alykhan, before we get into the all-encompassing, all-exciting scrimmage footage, which I guess these Ime-isms are part of the scrimmage footage that I was able to share earlier, two things that really stood out to me. And first off, attention to detail has been a recurring theme with Ime, right? Again, they're preaching execution, effort, and attention to detail above all else, right? And there's two things that really stood out to me. One, in the scrimmage footage, you'll notice that there are two referees running up and down the court, actually calling the game, like in real time, like legitimate referees. Now, I don't know if they're actual referee, whatever, but they're calling the game. They have actual refs in play. And that wasn't a thing last year. When the little bit of scrimmage footage and time that we saw last year with last year's version of the Rockets with Steven Silas, they didn't have guys who were actually reffing these scrimmages. And that's such like a small thing, and you might seem like such a small thing in the grand scheme of things, but that points to the attention to detail, right? Ime wants this to feel as real as possible for these guys. He wants them to feel like they're in a game setting, that the fouls are legitimate, that there's whistles being blown, that you're actually taking the time to go to the free throw line and get a free throw up after an and one opportunity, not just taking the ball out and ignoring the free throw part of the game, right? He's paying attention to every little piece along the way. And then also to close out practice after the scrimmage, the Rockets ran a free throw drill where Ime would select a player and the player would have to come to the free throw line and take two free throws. And if the player missed a free throw, everybody else, all other players were lined up on the baseline. And if the player missed a free throw, Ime would then call out a version of a suicide to run. So, sometimes he'd call out, all right, first free throw line. They'd run baseline, first free throw line back, little short one. Then sometimes he'd say, all right, half court, then free throw line. And they'd have to do like a little half suicide for every miss that happened. And I love that from an accountability perspective, from a team building and a culture building perspective, to show, hey, we are a team. If you make a mistake, that's not your mistake, it's our mistake, right? And so it's just these little kind of Ime-isms, the culture building tools that he's going to use to get these guys to where he wants them to be. They're so small, but I think that over time they're going to build and kind of get to what we're going to hopefully identify as Ime's version of culture for the Houston Rockets. So just wanted to highlight those couple things. But Alykhan, the scrimmage footage that has everybody raving, there's so many goodies to choose from. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. What was your favorite thing or the thing that stood out most to you about the scrimmage footage that you saw?
Okay, well, I have like 4 to 5 different things I like.
Yeah, but you have to pick. You have to pick your favorite.
Man. Okay,
the most important thing, or I can start. It's up to you.
No, I have one that I really want Rockets fans to pay attention to. So there were a good number of possessions that started with Jabari at the top of the key, similar to the role that Alperen and Sengun played when he was in the perimeter last year. And so that was a lot of wide action. So you should keep this term in your vocabulary, Rockets fans. Wide action. There's a lot of variations of this play, and Ime Udoka had this as a major staple of his in half court and after timeout plays when he was the coach for Boston. So this is something that we will likely cover on the show moving forward throughout the season while Ime is here. So wide action. I think it's just something to kind of keep in mind. So what is wide action? Basic flow for this is simple. It's a big in the middle of the floor. They're going to screen for the opposite wing, looking for a catch and shoot opportunity, and then flow into kind of like a spread pick and roll. Or another way to think about it, just for our visual people, is the trailing big. which means the big kind of walks to the top of the key early in the shot clocks. This is more of an early offense type of action. They set a screen in the middle of the floor for a guard coming to catch the ball and attack downhill. So you just think essentially guard middle of the floor. It involves a wing or a guard on the opposite side. And on the other side, you have a wing or a guard bringing the ball up the floor. It's kind of like a three-man action between those guys, depending on what the situation is from the defense. You can slip. You can kind of make that into something even bigger. So there's a lot of really cool possibilities. And there was a good number of positions. I counted at least 3 or 4 where Jabari was at the top of the key, and he had that as kind of the action where somebody came off the Jabari screen and it kind of floated into something else. That was really interesting to see.
Absolutely. And not only did we have those actions, we had one that caught the eyes everywhere, where Jabari actually postered Tari Eason. It's unfair to say he postered Tari because Tari was helping off the strong side corner, which is
hey, good for Tari on committing on that, by the way. I have to say, him and then Jermaine Samuels blocking Tari earlier, both those were examples of, hey, you think you need help, go help, commit. And that's something we talked about a lot last year. This team would not commit in making the decision whether or not they want to help from the corner or not. The next step is not just committing, but also communicating that you're going to commit. So somebody from the help side can rotate over to the corner, take away that 3. But absolutely right. Tari, that was a good play by him, even though he got dunked on by Jabari.
Yeah, but the way that play developed was you go back and watch it. First off, one of my major takeaways is having a point guard in Fred who actually and really Fred and Ime, because their court vision was very much on display in this brief amount of scrimmage time that we saw.
Wow.
Ime was dropping some dimes. But
really?
With Fred,
man.
With Fred, he was, every time he got the ball, walking it up, immediately surveying the court, right? He had a half-court alley-oop pass to Jalen Green for a dunk in transition, kind of, which was incredible. Yeah. But on the play that we're talking about with Jabari dunking the ball, Fred VanVleet walks the ball up and dishes it to Jabari at the top of the key. And then they actually ran an inverted 1-5 pick and roll. That was something that Rockets fans, if you remember in the bubble, that Jeff Green and James Harden actually ran a lot of 1-5 inverted pick and roll, where James Harden would screen for Jeff Green and then Jeff would attack downhill. And it really kind of destabilized the defense because it's not a very traditional, set to run, and it kind of throws things off. And so on that play, Fred VanVleet dishes the ball to Jabari and goes to set, not even really a full screen. It was almost like a quick, brush screen, ghost screen, whatever. But it was just enough to catch Jabari's defender off guard. And Jabari put the ball on the floor and took off. And man, Alykhan, when I tell you the level of fluidity with which Jabari looks like he can handle the basketball now at a 6'11" frame, how low he got on that drive, how in control of his dribble he was, and then to elevate and finish over the top of a very bulky Tari Eason, who is not an easy man to dunk over. It was an impressive play, top to bottom. Jabari also had a play, elsewhere in the scrimmage. I forget if it was before or after this, where he drove it in on the right side of the court and finished through contact. Got an and one play, just drove it in, absorbed contact, finished right at the rim. If Jabari can suddenly put the ball on the floor and actually create for himself and drive it all the way to the rim, which we saw him do in rare circumstances last year, that's really going to unlock a lot more for his game.
You and I always talk about on the show for our listeners that we don't like to compare notes before we go into it, because we want to see if we see similar things. And that those 2 finishes you just referenced were 2 finishes I wanted to highlight. The first was in transition where Jermaine Samuels blocked Tari Eason, and then Jalen found Jabari trailing for a layup. That's the layup you're talking about, finishing from that side of the court. What stood out to me on that specific play was that he didn't deviate. He was going north to south. He caught it. He got low initially to get past the initial defender, then came up strong, hit the ball high with both hands and finished. So that was key for me, number one. And that shows how that added strength is giving him more confidence to do that. Second thing, and you talked about on the inverted pick and roll with Fred, what's really important for a guy like Jabari who was stiff, it wasn't that he wasn't getting low. He was very diagonal. And I would call it like it's not even a acute angle. It was barely a right angle. and so he didn't get down.
Barely. No, that's Jabari. That's rookie year Jabari's new nickname that we have to retroactively attribute to him. Barely a right angle Smith Jr. There we go.
No, I mean, no, look, man, look, on these things, you want to try to get as horizontal to the floor, your upper body as horizontal to the floor as possible, so you can get past the initial defender. And he did that on that play. Like, I need to find the screenshot of it, because if you look at it frame by frame, that snippet of him getting low on the inverted pick and roll, he gets so low that he just uses that to get past. And it's like a swimmer, right? Whenever they kind of switch, they hit the wall and they're going back around, they go low and they kind of gradually rise back up. That's how it felt like with Jabari. It was so smooth. He went low and then came straight up like he was coming out of the water, and boom, put up the dunk. So he looked great. And there was a few other possessions where Fred kind of, had a pick and roll with him. He got the ball, decided, you know what, I want to keep it to myself, try to shoot a three. And then there was another play that I'm going to highlight later on where he was involved in a three-man action where he kind of got the ball and got himself involved. So he looks a lot more comfortable, a lot more confident, but the dribble is now going to allow him to execute on that, right? When he wasn't able to dribble effectively, it seemed like he was trying to force. Now that he can dribble and he can use his body to actually get low and get past defenders, it's going to open a lot more for him in his game. And that's something that, Jackson, you and I have talked about it. People have talked to you about it in the organization. He's worked on that all offseason, trying not to be stiff, getting low on both post-ups and face-ups to be able to create those advantages on drives.
Coming up, more thoughts from the scrimmage footage that we have. A lot more to talk about with Fred, Jalen Green, Ime Thompson, and Jae'Sean Tate, of all players. We're going to get there in just one moment. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Some final thoughts on this. And honestly, we're probably not going to be able to get to all of our thoughts on this scrimmage because there was so much detail to kind of pick out of this. And we're going to have more scrimmage footage from the next 3 days of training camp. So definitely be on the lookout for those as well. I'll be uploading everything to the LOR YouTube channel. But Alykhan, for me, we kind of already highlighted a little bit, Fred, his court vision, Ime looked really fantastic. He makes such crisp, quick decisions with the basketball. He moves. So his speed, until you see him in person, it's really tough to register just how insanely fast he is and it's tough because sometimes you have an athlete who is incredibly fast, right? They have the physical gifts, but their mind can't keep up with them. He is mentally so fast, and his processing speed is through the roof. One of the opening plays of the scrimmage is a jump ball where the Rockets recover the jump ball, and Ime recovers the ball kind of in the paint area, and he does a quick fake and then a shovel pass to Jae'Sean Tate, who cut in for an easy layup right at the rim. And it happens in all the span of about a second. Like, it is insanely quick how he read what happened, how he drew the two defenders, and immediately knew where Jae'Sean Tate was and shoveled the ball right over to him. And that is actually a very important point that I wanted to bring up, is that Jae'Sean Tate and Ime Thompson were playing on the same team for a stretch of this scrimmage footage that we saw, and they both took turns facilitating the offense. And here's the kicker. When one wasn't facilitating, whether it was Ime or Jae'Sean, whoever didn't have the ball in their hands wasn't just parked at the three-point line as, a liability to shoot the basketball, because they're not great three-point shooters. They were cutting, they were moving without the basketball, they were screening, they were getting in position to rebound or in position to run back on defense. They were actively doing so many things when they didn't have the basketball. There was even a singular possession where they both kind of took turns on one possession. One of them drove in, kicked it to the next one, then another drive, and it was just this constant motion. And it was such a far cry from what we saw last year, where there was a lot of standing around and no cutting, no movement. Guys looked like they had no idea what they were supposed to do when somebody else had the ball, whether it was Jalen or Kevin. And it became a lot of your turn, my turn, isolation ball. And honestly, in this practice with the Jabari inverted pick and roll, with Fred finding Jalen for all these, off-ball cuts and actions, This is the most creativity that I think I've seen out of Houston Rockets basketball for the better part of 3 years. And it came in 10 minutes of scrimmage practice, which is really depressing to have to say out loud, but it's also factual.
The point you make about Jae'Sean was interesting because he was playing lead ball handler at times, even with men on the floor. And in those lineups, it was important, as we saw in the scrimmage, to create early offense. And what I mean by that is just whoever has the ball, whether it's Jae'Sean or Amen, the first 7 to 8 seconds, you want to touch the paint. And once you touch the paint, you pass it out. That gets this defense scrambling. That gets the ball moving side to side. You don't even have to run a play. You don't have to worry about spacing or things like that. Once you get the ball moving, it's easy for you to be able to read and react accordingly. And in my opinion, Amen's best skill right now is his ability to touch the paint and pass it back out. That was something, if you look at his scouting report, something if you look at the film, something if you watch Overtime Elite tape, he was so good at touching the paint and passing it out. And if you're the Rockets, you want to use that to your advantage and playing faster with the second unit, playing smaller, which we saw. We likely will see Jock Longdale as a backup 5. But Jeff Green at the 5, which we saw in that scrimmage, will also be a common thing. And so I'm eager to see how they kind of, work around that moving forward. And one last thing about the creativity. The last possession of the scrimmage, go back and watch it. They didn't really score or do anything well on that because Jae'Sean Tate played some great defense on Fred VanVleet. But the Rockets ran Spain pick and roll. At the end of essentially that period of time, they had Jabari as a screener, Fred as a ball handler, and Jalen baseline about to the back screen on Jabari's man. So I thought that was very interesting and something that I wish we saw more last season, because you have capable guys who are able to move and are athletic and do some things, and you want to be able to do that. And also, by the way, besides Spain pick and roll, there was a possession where it was essentially a split action, like what Golden State likes to run with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, kind of going in different directions. Jabari had the ball. Fred kind of set a screen for Jalen. Jalen cut one way, Fred cut the other. Those movement actions are going to be so important for helping Jalen get open, but also Fred get open too. And then Fred also did a great job in those possessions of relocating, not just going to one part, but continuously moving after he gave the basketball. So not just the creativity, but the player movement as well was a welcome insight to my eyes.
Absolutely. And also, look, they were playing hard. Like, this is, I want to impress upon our listeners and our viewers, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening via podcast, the way that they did this is the footage that's out there that I was able to capture is on the main court at McNeese State University. They actually did the majority of their practice on the practice court, which is in the adjacent gymnasium, and it's connected, same building. And we were able to hear some of the practice, but we couldn't see any of it. The door was like cracked open and they had their security detail posted there. When I say that there was so much yelling and communication going on and a good bit of swearing as well, like they were really getting after it. And that, like, it sounded like they were going 110 already in the first day of scrimmages. And even in the little bit of scrimmage time that we saw, one of the things that they are really trying to focus on is communication, both communication offensively and communication on the defensive side. There are moments that you can see throughout the scrimmage footage where Rockets assistant coach Ben Sullivan will actually walk all the way onto the court and be yelling at the guys as they're trying to get back on defense on the side of the court that I was closest to. So the side where the players are closer to the camera, and he'll be yelling at the guys, communicate, talk, yell, explain, like just yelling at his guys, trying to get them. And this is what we're talking about when we say Ime Udoka is having to break things down to the ground floor and really rebuild this thing from nothing, trying to get them into good habits, right? Communicating, being able to understand where guys are before they can get into anything else that's, a little bit more detailed, right? More advanced schemes, be it offensively, defensively, all that stuff. I do want to highlight here, one immediate takeaway that a lot of Rockets fans had was, where in the hell is Alperen Sengun? I have it on good authority that they plan to bench Alpi, and Bruno Fernando is actually on the way. But no, I'm kidding. I kid. I can't bring that up. The Rockets fans are going to get extra salty. No, I kid. Sengun is fine. He's not hurt. He wasn't benched or anything. He was just doing his ice down routine at the end of practice, and it just so happened that he wasn't available for that final stretch. But I specifically asked somebody, is Alperen Sengun hurt. And they told me he was not hurt. He's fine. So unless I was lied to, I have it on good authority. Alpi is totally fine.
We gotta ice you down, Jackson. What kind of joke was that, man? Oh my god!
Oh, I couldn't resist, man. I had to put Rockets fans through it. Look, I do also want to highlight the fact that I did get the chance to ask Ime Udoka about kind of his vision for Alperen Sengun in the offense. And shout out to Ime, because I got the chance to ask him 2 questions during day 1 of camp. And for both questions, he gave me kind of a decent first answer, but then I was able to, hit him with a follow-up, and he gave a lot more insight and detail on the subsequent follow-up questions than the initial response. And that's the difference between like a press conference environment and a traditional media scrum, is you're able to kind of get those follow-ups and try to dig a little bit deeper to find out a little bit more. So, originally I kind of asked, how do you envision using Sengun? And he talked about, somebody with that much talent, you can kind of use him anywhere on the floor. You can use him, in post-ups as well. You can use him, in the pick and roll, but he also mentioned having him on the perimeter. And so I followed up asking, is that a point of emphasis for the current coaching staff to have LP on the perimeter and to take those shots when given? And he said, absolutely. When LP's out there on the perimeter, if the defense is leaving him open, he needs to be able to make them pay. And that is such a far cry from last season, where we know that the coaching staff actually actively wanted him to not take those threes, right? So much to the point that it kind of messed with his confidence, to where you'd see him with nobody near him, not within 15 feet, and he still wouldn't pull the trigger on those 3-pointers because the coaching staff didn't want him taking those shots. So it's just so much is different from a year ago to where we are today with this organization, Alykhan.
He mentioned one more thing. He mentioned one more thing, and I know we want to get to Reggie Bullock about LP that I want to just talk about. In his answer to you, he said he's also very good on the perimeter with his passing ability and IQ. Don't have to be a point guard dominant team at times when you have a center like him who can pass the ball. That was an interesting thought to me, because I want to also add some additional context. Earlier, or in media day, he was speaking to Sports Talk 790, and he mentioned that they had a coaches retreat in Austin a few weeks ago. And him and the staff went through different starting lineup possibilities, and kind of we saw some things today in the scrimmage and stuff like that. But I'm saying that in mind because today in the scrimmage, you saw a lot of Jae'Sean Tate and Ime Thompson doing lead ball handling responsibilities where Fred and Jalen were there. It makes me think that Fred and Jalen will kind of stagger a little bit, and then you'll also have Jae'Sean and Ime kind of trying, based on how much playing time Ime gets playing that role. But his comment about LP, I'm going to say it again, don't have to be a point guard dominant team at times when you have a center like him who can pass the ball, makes me think we will see some LP minutes when he's with wings, and maybe a shooting guard like a Reggie Bullock who can play that wing as well, surrounding him with guys where LP can create. And he also mentioned multiple times yesterday in scrimmage, also in media day, that you have a guy who's one of the better low post scorers in the league. So he's kind of hinting at how he wants to be able to use LP all over. They're going to place him all over on the perimeter, but he has the ability to kind of run an offense when you want to, maybe not stagger, or maybe just give some time off to Fred or Jalen over the course of a game. You can have LP run multiple possessions through him to create for others. So I thought that was very important.
Sounds like Shin Hub to me. Music to my ears. We've been waiting forever for this, Alykhan. It's going to be exciting to see, and hopefully we do get some scrimmage footage of Sengun actually out there. That would be a ton of fun over these next few days. Definitely on my short-term wish list. But also got to talk about Reggie Bullock and this amazing signing by the Houston Rockets, because Reggie Bullock gets bought out by the San Antonio Spurs and hits waivers, and is immediately going to be one of the most attractive potential free agents for contenders and teams with playoff aspirations all around the league, right? He is one of the better 3-and-D wings in the association. And he gets bought out from the San Antonio Spurs and comes to the Houston Rockets of all teams. I think that speaks volumes about where this organization is at, and how this has now potentially become a place that people want to come play for, right? And that a large part of that, if not all of it, I think has to be attributed to Ime Udoka, right? Because this organization had a funk about it, right, for the last 2 to 3 years. Bad culture, losing, all of that. Whereas now you bring in Ime, and I do think the Rockets have done a fantastic job riding the wave, I guess, of the excitement, the hype around Ime. It's like you've got like the new car smell, right, with the fresh head coach, the goals and aspirations for this season. And the pickup of Reggie Bullock is incredible because now that is a guy that very clearly can help fill the void that was left by Kevin Porter Jr., who was likely going to be, at the time before the allegations, the incident, was likely going to be the best shooter on the Rockets roster. So now you add Reggie Bullock, who will likely be the best shooter on the Rockets roster. And my kind of tentative prediction, I guess, is that in conjunction with utilizing, Alperen Sengun as kind of the primary facilitator at times, running some offense through him, I think that we'll likely see kind of a 3-guard rotation between Fred, Jalen, and Ime, where those 3 guys kind of cycle a little bit. And let's face it, Ime is basically a wing the way that he's built. He's 6'7". He's built like a wing. He's not a guard. I think we're going to see a lot of lineups where there's like 1 guard and a bunch of wings out there, right? 1 guard, a bunch of wings, and 1 big, which provides a lot of versatility defensively. And then offensively, if you have Sengun out there, as long as you still have Sengun or Ime, or again, Jae'Sean Tate can be a supplementary playmaker, at times, as we saw in the scrimmage footage, which is clearly something they're probably going to work on as well. There's just a lot of possibilities with this lineup. And now with the addition of Reggie Bullock, I don't think the Rockets are in a position where they need to make a move with the Kevin Porter Jr. contract to try and add an impact player. Like, I don't want to see them try and trade for Malcolm Brogdon now and give up assets to do so. I don't think they need it. They can very easily just hold on to KPJ's contract, tell him to stay away from the team, and then maybe they make a deal with it around the trade deadline, or if nothing materializes, worst case scenario, they just waive him. But now they can hold on to that and keep that salary slot alive without having to worry about finding a deal and paying assets to offload that contract and get him away from the team.
And just something to keep in mind about Reggie Bullock, and I asked some of my Mavericks friends and some others about, just tell me more about Reggie, how he played with you. There are times where he's very streaky. So he'll have games where he's on, and then he'll have games where he's off. And just to give you some insight, this is all from last season, okay? 81% of his attempts were of the catch-and-shoot variety. And most of those were from three-point range. He shot 39.3% on them. Almost 2 for 5 on catch-and-shoot threes. So when he shoots on 0 dribbles, essentially catch-and-shoot, he's 39%. When he dribbles once, he's 17.6%. And he doesn't really shoot that well when he has to take multiple dribbles. So he's a catch-and-shoot guy. All right? When he's wide open, so a guy who can kind of create space and maybe be that safety valve in a corner or a slot, 37%. From 4 to 6 feet in terms of space between him and the defender, 39%. 2 to 4 feet tight coverage, 43%. So he is a guy who can knock down those shots, but you have to make sure that you get him on the move and get him in situations where he's catch and shooting. And like you said, this is going to be a safety valve for LP. You put him in a lineup with him. You put him in a lineup with a guy like Jalen Green who likes to go downhill. Putting him in a lineup with guys who want to touch the paint and kick it out, he will have ample opportunities to take some shots. And you're hoping with this percentage he can be more consistent and he can knock it down at a consistent rate. I think all you can ask for is 36, 37, 38% from him, and kind of playing alongside some of those young guys, just complementing their games on those constant situations. It's going to, I think, honestly give him a lot of playing time next season.
And honestly, I think one of the other things that goes, that just to highlight really, really quickly before we shut things down is I thought that he was going to be coming to the Rockets, on like a room mid-level exception, or just that the Rockets likely had to overpay for his services, given the fact that other contenders would have been lining up, hammering at his door, trying to get him to come play for them. He's coming to the Rockets on a vet minimum. So the Rockets did not have to overpay to acquire one of the best 3-and-D role players in the entire association. And again, I think you have to give a lot of credit to Ime, a lot of credit to the veterans that they brought in. This is now potentially a desirable spot for NBA players to want to come play again, and if to play for again. And if the Rockets can have a strong season and make a push, play inbound, whatever, and have kind of a Cinderella-esque season where they bounce back and get back to relevant basketball, then I think you could see, we know that there's reporting by Adrian Wojnarowski that this upcoming season could see a lot of star movement with players, leaving their respective markets. The Rockets could very easily be a destination that a star player, a disgruntled star, wants to be moved to, which is not something that I thought we would have been saying just as recently as 3 months ago, or whenever slightly before Ime got hired. Maybe I'm shortchanging on the timeline here, but you get my point. It's just this organization has not been a primary destination or even a secondary destination for a lot of NBA players for a few years now. So it feels good to have players who want to be here again. And again, getting Reggie Bullock is going to be a huge boon for this team this season. Alykhan, you know the drill. Let everyone know where to track you down at.
You can follow me on Twitter at Rockets_insider. And like we talked about, this was just the first of many kind of film breakdowns. And we have the clips. We're going to have actual game footage coming up here in the next week. I'm excited, Jackson. This is going to be a great time to be a Rockets fan, because you have so much excitement and stability now to be able to watch your team and have a better understanding of where these guys are and where they can go.
That's going to do it for another edition of Locked On Rockets. As always, thank you so much for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. What was your favorite part from Houston Rockets day one of training camp? Drop it in the YouTube comments, and also be on the lookout for all of our continued coverage while I'm here in Lake Charles for the rest of Houston Rockets training camp. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.